We all know electric bikes are advancing, and it's nothing new to see an e-bike that can connect to your smartphone. But what about an e-bike that can not only connect to your smartphone, but also has regenerative braking, 4G connectivity, real-time GPS tracking, anti-lock brakes, and automatic gear shifting? Well, meet the Stromer ST5. It's a premium electric bike that's designed to push the boundaries of not only what e-bikes can do, but how far they can take you as well. I'm Mike with EBR, and today we're deep diving into the Stromer ST5 Pinion. So take a ride with me, and let's see what this thing can do. Now, the Stromer ST5 Pinion is a Class 3 e-bike, meaning it can get to speeds of 28 miles per hour on PAS. Now, this bike has a starting MSRP of $11,990, so it's definitely on the more premium side of bike purchases. This bike is not UL certified, but the company tells us they're in that process now and expect it by the end of this year. And this bike comes in two colors. So here we have the Imperial Red, which is a matte finish, but they also have an Adventure Green, which is like a forest green color, also in a matte finish, that actually looks very nice on the bike. Now, the payload capacity of this bike is 330 pounds. The bike itself weighs 75.5 pounds the way it sits here, but if you remove the battery, which I'll show you how to later, then the bike's weight comes down to around 66 pounds, and the battery itself weighs about 9.5 pounds. Now, when it comes to frame sizes, this bike comes in 3 size configurations. There's a medium, there's a large like we have here, and then there's an extra large. Now, for the size medium, it fits riders that are 5'10" and below. For the large we have here, it fits riders from 5'9" up to 6'2", and then the extra large frame fits riders from 6'2" and above. Now, personally at 5'11", I'm right in the middle of that 5'9" to 6'2" range, and the bike fits me very well, although in my opinion, the reach is a little bit long, but that could just be me. Now, when it comes to lighting on this bike, there's quite a few things going on. So up front, we have the MPP Pro 2 headlight that's integrated into the handlebar. This can be adjusted left or up or down, excuse me. And the light just turned off because it timed out. And so, as you can see here, it's got a high beam and a low beam that you can switch to on the headlight button here on the handlebar. And then there's this V-shaped light that stays on all the time that cannot be turned off. That acts more of a daytime running light, something to always be seen, which is a nice factor. And then hidden under here, you kind of have this little accessory port where you can plug in a USB port and charge your devices that run up to the handlebar, which is really nice as well. Now, when it comes to tires on the Stromer ST5, they went with a premium tire, and that's the Pirelli Angel ST in a city tire tread pattern. So kind of a slick with a little bit of seeping going on in the tread. This tire is sized at 27.5 by 2.4 inches, and these tires have really nice low rolling resistance, almost no noise on the road, and when I ride them, they're very smooth on city streets and paths. A really solid tire choice that they went with. Now, protecting these tires and you from the elements are these oversized fenders. Now, these fenders are made from what they say is a recyclable carbon polyamide, and according to them, that uses 50% less CO2 than regular aluminum production for the fenders. Now, the bike has no additional mounting points except for 2 bosses right here where you could add accessories for flat kits or a water bottle cage, but you really only have the 2 bosses to use as mounting points. Now, the motor on the Stromer ST5 Pinion is located here in the rear hub, and it's made by a company called Sino or Sino, it's spelled S-Y-N-O, and this is the sport motor at 750 watts. Now, this does not peak at over 750 watts, it stays at 750, and it has a torque rating output of 48 Newton meters. Now, when I first heard 48 Newton meters, I thought that was on the low side, but I'm not sure how they've got this programmed, but really, this 48 Newton meters of torque with this 750 watt motor, it's a very, very effective combo, and this thing will rip up hills. We have a local steep hill that we ride. It's got an average grade of over 12%, and this thing cruised right up it, averaging over 15 miles an hour the whole time. So it's got plenty of muscle despite that 48 Newton meter torque rating. Now, the activation of this motor is done through a torque sensor, which the goal of a torque sensor is to measure your input and effort and ultimately try to vary the power it gives you back, matching your effort. And this is without a doubt the best torque sensor I've ever felt, especially from a rear hub motor. It never feels like it's pushing you. It never feels jumpy. It just feels like you're in better shape than you are and your legs are stronger than they are. And ultimately, that's the goal of any torque sensor. This is just the best execution I've ever seen of it. And for this price, I would hope it could do that, and it definitely delivers there. Now, another cool feature about this motor and this system in general is regenerative braking. Now, we get asked all the time, hey, are winter e-bikes going to get regenerative braking? And I think there's a couple barriers to that. One is just the cost of engineering and development, and two is how effective it's actually going to be. So this motor has two options to use with regenerative braking. One, every time you hit the brakes, you will get a little bit of regenerative braking that will add some juice back to your battery. But one of the cooler features is on a long descent. So say you're on a touring ride or you have a long descent in front of you of maybe coming off a mountain pass and you have 5-10 miles of downhill and you're going to be coasting and riding the brakes. You can actually set this to recoup mode in the display by holding the down PAS button, and it will let you select a speed that you'd like the bike to stay at. So say I'm cruising down a hill and gravity is just pulling me down at 30 miles an hour. I can turn that on, set it to 28 or 25, and this bike will hold that with motor braking and use that kinetic energy to build up more juice back to the battery. Now, we tested this on a roughly 4-mile stretch here in town of descent, and it got us back about 3% of our battery. And while that may not seem like a lot, it's really great to have, and that 3% could mean the difference between you getting home or not, and it's just really cool to see on an e-bike these days. Now, moving up to the battery on this bike, it is a 48 volt, 20.4 amp hour battery, giving 983 watt hours, which is pretty substantial. Now, it's stored in this down tube, and the down tube is actually really beefy. My hand doesn't even get halfway around it. It's just a big down tube. But to remove it, so the first thing you'll need to do is power on the bike, and there is a button located on the underside of the frame, and that will turn on the bike. We'll need to enter a code. Now, you can set the code to whatever you want in the app. Personally, we just set this one to an easy to remember code. And then once you're in here, you access the menu by hitting the power button underneath the top tube here, and you'll hit eject. And when I do, you'll hear a little click, and that's this electronically unlocking the battery for removal. And as I do that, I will show you how that ejects. So I'll hit it, you hear the click, I hit this button, and the battery pops out. Now, looking at this battery, you can tell this is a beefy battery. Again, 983 watt hours, 48 volt, 20.4 amp hours, and a lot of range. So Stromer advertises this battery as going 110 miles of range, or estimating that. Now, our friends over at Electric Bike Report tested this bike, and in mode 1, which is the easiest mode, the bike got 41 miles of range. Excuse me, in mode 1, it got 94 miles of range, and in sport mode, it got 41 miles. So 94 miles on a single charge from this battery is pretty impressive. So let's go ahead and put this back inside. So you'll just slide it in here, this little flap stays open, and then you shut that back in place. So it's nice to have an electronically locked battery inside your bike. My only concern with that is if you have mechanical problems or firmware problems with the bike, or it's completely dead, you may not be able to get that electronic lock undone, but there may also be a workaround for that as well. Now, when it comes to drive modes on this motor battery combo, you have 4 modes. You have mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3, and then you have sport mode being the fastest. Now, you can use mode 1, 2, and 3 as much as you want, but if you use sport mode, it will limit you at some point. It's not meant to stay on all the time. However, we've gotten 40 miles before it kicked off. So quite a bit of distance in that, and 4 modes of driving. Now, the component lineup on this bike is impressive, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's just start right up here at kind of the star of the show, and that is the Pinion gearbox. Now, the drive itself on this gearbox is a Gates carbon belt drive, and there's a couple advantages to these over a traditional chain. One is you're not going to have just typical chain rattle and noise on your drivetrain. This is a low maintenance system, meaning that this lasts, what they say, is twice as long as a regular chain, and the tension on this is automatically applied through the life of the belt through this automatic tensioning wheel here. Now, the chain ring attached to the belt is a 39 tooth chain ring, and attached to that we have 175 millimeter crank arms that are made by Pinion. Now, the pedals that come with this bike are flat black aluminum mountain bike style pedals that have raised studs for grip on the soles of your shoes. Now, the Pinion gearbox itself is the C1.9 model, and that's a 9-speed gearbox. And those 9 speeds, I've rode this bike all over town, up hills, down hills, in traffic, and casual paths. I never felt like it was ghost pedaling or undergeared or overgeared in any scenario. So the gear range is around 568%, and it's a very good range that I found to be very useful on all of my rides. Now the gearbox itself says Pinion gearbox automatic shifting. And when I heard that the first time, I thought to myself, it was like an automatic transmission in a car where it would determine what gear I needed based on how I was riding and make those adjustments for me. That's not how these work, and I'll kind of talk about what it does. So you have electronic trigger shifters up top, which we'll get into in a second with the cockpit section. But those allow you to shift up or down just like you would any bike as you need it. No surprises there. But what it does do is in the app, you can select a downshift gear. And the way that works is when you're riding and you stop at a traffic light or a stop sign and you have to start going again, many times personally, I'm in a heavy gear because I'm riding kind of fast. And then when you go to jump back on that bike and traffic starts going again, now you realize, uh-oh, I'm in a heavy gear, I'm up out of the saddle, or I'm doing a dreaded shifting under load, which is bad for the drivetrain in general. And this allows the bike to, you pick a gear, and every time you stop, it automatically downshifts to that gear. You don't have to think about it, it's all automatic. And I really love that feature because I'm the guy that always forgets to downshift at a light, and this just does it for me, and I really appreciate that. Also, the system is very low maintenance. So the only thing this needs is it's a completely sealed unit made out of magnesium, so a very high quality material, and it's lightweight. But in addition to that, the only thing you'll need to do is change the oil in this gearbox every 6,200 miles or each 1 year period, whichever comes first. And that's it. That's all you've got to do to manage this drivetrain. Now, when it comes to braking, that's another cool area of this bike. So right off the bat, front and back hydraulic disc brakes, which you would expect. But these are very quality brakes. These are made by TRP. Although they're branded by Stromer, it's in partnership with TRP, and they're very good brakes. They're 4-piston calipers mated to 203 millimeter rotors, front and back, and the braking on these is phenomenal, confident, strong every single time with lots of good modulation. I just like these brakes a lot. But then it gets even better. This bike has anti-lock braking system, or an ABS system. And the way it works is only on the front wheel, you have a second smaller rotor, smaller diameter rotor, that will receive pulsing ABS signals to help you slow down. But it's not just that. The way it works is, because it's on the front wheel only, that was designed to prevent the dreaded, every cyclist dreaded over the bars scenario, where you brake too hard on that left side or that front brake, and it ultimately sends you over the handlebars. With having an ABS system on the front wheel, it can detect the speed and angle of your bike, and if it sees something that looks dangerous, it will adjust those pulses on the front end to make sure you can still stop safely, but keep your back tire from going over and sending you ultimately over the bars. So a very, very cool system that I've played with as much as I safely can, as much as I'd love to demo this at full speed and just rip the front brake. I don't have it in my heart to do it for you guys, and I don't think my insurance bill would be friendly to me. So I'm not gonna go that far, but I can say just playing with it, doing it some hard braking, it seems to be very effective, and it's a super cool concept that hopefully prevents some of you guys from OTBing the bars. So also on this bike, we have back here an integrated rear rack, and it's rated for 55 pounds. And then also behind me here on the back tire, you have a tail light that also doubles as a brake light, as well as a mounting plate for any type of license plate or identification you want to put on your bike, which is another cool feature of it. Now, moving up to the saddle, let's take a look at what we have going on there. So if you look at the site of Stromer, it'll say the bike comes with either a Cell Royale Vivo saddle or an Ergon saddle. Now, the saddle we got on this bike is the Cell Royale Vivo saddle. It's been very comfortable, and it's a very good brand to work with, so nice to see that on there. Now, this saddle has some adjustability. The saddle height starts at 31.5 inches. It can be adjusted all the way up to 39.5, so around 8 inches of travel there, and you can loosen that with an Allen key right here at the base. Now, some other important geometry here is 29.5 inches for standover height. You have 40 inches from front wheel hub to rear wheel hub, and then you have around 18.5 inches of reach, which all in all, it makes for a very comfortable ride. If you notice here, the suspension on the seat post, this is an optional upgrade for $249. You can get the Connect suspension seat post. Personally, I'd never used these in the past, and I didn't think much of them, but after riding this bike quite a bit, I'm kind of a fan. It just does a good job of eliminating those vibrations from your lower back and spine and sit bones, and it just ultimately leads to a more comfortable, longer ride that you can enjoy without feeling that fatigue in your back. Now, when it comes to the front end suspension, as you can see, we have a rigid aluminum fork here. You do have an option at the time of purchasing to upgrade this to a Ren Sports inverted suspension fork, which if you're in the market and you're thinking about you want suspension, at least you have that option when you buy. Personally, on my rides, I didn't feel like it was super necessary, but when a bike costs $12,000, I probably would just go ahead and add it just for the added comfort, because at that point, there's no turning back, right? But let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in the cockpit here. Starting things off, let's just talk about the overall wiring of the bike. Every wire is internally routed and hidden, and everything looks very sleek and clean, and that theme continues even up here in the cockpit. So on the left-hand side, you do get an integrated rear view mirror, which is always great if you're doing city riding or commuting. You can see traffic, oncoming cars, things like that. On each side, you have black rubber ergonomic grips, which feel really good. Right here, you have a headlight button where you can adjust between high beam and low beam on the MPP Pro 2 headlight, which at low beam is 1100 lumens and at high beam is 1600 lumens. So very nice LED lighting, and it is adjustable as far as the angle of the light, which I like. You also have your up and down arrows that work for your PAS modes, so mode 1, 2, 3, and sport mode. And then these also can be used when you're navigating some of the things within the display that we'll talk about in just a minute. Here you have a electronic horn. In the center, if you notice, this handlebar is a one-piece stem handlebar design with all these integrated features. Now this handlebar width itself is 800 millimeters. And then right here on this flat portion of the integrated stem, you do have a removable cover. And what they did is Stromer allowed and included a SP Connect mounting hole that you can screw into. So if you have any SP Connect accessories like a phone case or a bike computer or any other accessory that's got an SP Connect, you can use this feature here. If you're not interested in that, you can always take the supplied cover and just put it back in the slot and keep it out of sight, out of mind. This has never moved, come off, and it always looks nice and clean when you're riding. Now, both brake levers are the Stromer and TRP brake system levers, and the shifter here is electronic shifting through the Pinion C1.9 gearbox with the 9-speed. Now, a cool feature of this is, unlike a cable actuated shifter like you may be familiar with, where each shifter is tied to a literal cable that runs to your rear derailleur, because this is electronic, just sending a signal, you can go into the app and program which button does what. So if you want a certain button to be your downshift and the other button to be your upshift, or vice versa, you can make that selection within the app, just giving you that flexibility, which is always a nice feature, and everyone's got different taste. So all in all, a really nice setup. So as you can see, clean lines, clean cable management, and a very clean, kind of techie cockpit that just leads to a nice clean look of the bike. All right, so the Stromer display, when you open the app, this is going to be your home screen. It's got a picture of your bike. It's got the time and its current status is unlocked. If I want to lock it, I just hit the button. Current battery level is 86% or 83. Trip meters 297. Outside temperature 82, and then the motor's temperature is 94. Now, riding display, if you mount your bike up on your handlebar, you can hit this, and this will essentially turn into just a larger display for you to use while you ride your bike. Now, down here you have the map, and if you go into the map, it'll give your current location, as well as any certified areas to get your bike serviced while you're out. And you can hit one of these buttons and it'll give you navigation to that area. Now, the next slider down below is going to be your settings configuration, where you can adjust sensors for the sensitivity of the pedals and the sensitivity of the braking. And once you make your changes, you hit transfer and it'll send that to the bike. Here you have motor tuning, where you can adjust speed, torque, and agility to your own custom settings, or you can use the presets, touring, city, and snow, and then standard. So all have unique profiles. If you don't have a specific way to do it, you can use one of these predetermined ones, or you can just make your own. And once you make your settings, again, hit transfer, and that will go to the bike. Now, riding display, I showed you earlier, but here you can turn that function on or off. You can change the secret pin code or the security pin code to your bike. You can adjust the time it takes for it to auto lock when you park it. You can change smart lock, which is unlock and lock your Stromer with your mobile device from your pocket using Bluetooth connection, which is nice. You have anti-theft mode, which is a 3-step process, which once it's activated, if someone moves your bike or attempts to ride it, it not only will sound an audible alarm that's very loud, but it will also use the motor Many e-bikes will just turn the motor's ability off, and so a crook would have to pedal it away. But on this bike, it will actually motor brake it, and will make it to where you can't even pedal it, let alone use motor, which is really cool. And then the third feature of that security is it will send you a text message with real-time GPS tracking, because the bike has 4G connectivity, and it will ping cell towers that it's nearby, regardless of whether it's on or off. You can change here your units of measurements, your English language or your language of choice, as well as your time format between 24 and 12 hours. Over here, you can look at all the statistics from the life of the bike today, and you can break it down by days, weeks, months, or years. So lots of cool data in there. And then here is going to be your personal profile. So you've got the bike's info, the mileage, user manual, service booklet, and then if you wanted to unpair it and remove it, you could do that as well, as well as some support things you can look at too. Now, here in the service booklet, you can see when the next service is due or the date it's due by. You have an active reminder, the bike's VIN, the warranty dates, and then a full list of components for wherever you get it serviced. They'll know exactly what you got on the bike, and your firmware status, your firmware update number as well. So lots of info in this app, and then there's also a lot more to discuss on the display, so let's go take a look at that as well. All right, so when you approach your bike, it's going to be in a locked configuration, so you just hit the button on the underside of the top tube. That will bring up your lock screen, and here we just have a temporary code we put in, and then that unlocks the display. Now you'll see that turns on the headlight, that kind of gets the bike ready to ride, and you've got a few things going on. You've got your 4G bar status, which there is a SIM card in here with 4G connectivity. You have your Bluetooth, because I'm paired to my phone. You have your GPS indicator and your light beam indicator. Here you have your speed in miles per hour. Here is the starting gear we talked about, where that automatic gearbox will go down to the gear of your choice. We have it in third gear at this point, but that can be changed to any gear you want. We have about 84% of battery. You can see you have between mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, and then sport mode. Now, when it comes to menus within the display, if you hit this button again on the underside, you'll get an initial menu, and here you can lock the bike again, you can power it down, you can enter move, and that'll just be like a walking mode. You can hit eject, and that's what releases the battery electronically, or you can go into more menus. And here we have bike settings like braking. You can adjust the sensitivity of the brakes. Recoup mode, which is going to be that regenerative braking. You can change the force of the pedals that's required to deactivate the regeneration mode. So if you start pedaling, at what level it'll say, okay, you're pedaling again and no more regenerative braking. That's where you can adjust that sensitivity. And then here, you can adjust the speed increments at which, when you're in that cruise control mode, say you want it to stay at 20 miles an hour, I have it in 2 mile an hour increments. Say I want to change that to 18, I hit down once, it goes down from 20 to 18. Or if I did this, say, in 1 mile per hour increments, it would go from 20 to 19, depending on how many times I hit the button. But here you can just change the incremental changes within the regenerative braking cruise control feature. So over to torque sensor, you can calibrate the torque sensor, and you can change the sensitivity. This is where we have it, and it's been phenomenal at this setting. The smart shift system, you can start select, that's that gear selection, so you can choose between any one of the 9 gears. We use the third gear, or if you don't want that feature at all and you like starting in whatever gear you want, you can turn that feature off altogether. The trigger, this is where we talked about the electronic shifting. You can pick the standard configuration or inverse configuration for the up and down shifting, which is nice. And then you can go into totals, and that's going to have some just statistics of the bike. You can go to reset your trip information. Here is the OMNI, so that OMNI app that I just showed you guys, this is where you would get a code and you would configure your phone to your bike and pair it. Service is where you're going to see the date of the last service, being that this is a new demo bike. This has not had a service, but the next service is due in 324 miles or by March of 2025. And that is going to be it in the bike settings. For Bluetooth, enter the code again, and you can go into the OMNI app, make sure that's on, and the devices that are paired to it. You can use your smart lock feature, turn that off and on. And then if you have the Stromer Smart Helmet, which pairs to all of this, that is where you would make sure this is paired as well. Now, settings here, you can go and change your pin, you can change the language, you can change the units of measurement. Here in the battery section, you can do remaining range or a numerical percentage to check your battery levels. In time, you can choose between 12 and 24-hour formats. Background will just adjust the brightness or dark mode or auto. Sound, the bike does have like an audible sound when it turns on or powers down, and you can adjust that volume when you do that. And the alarm, you can turn it off or on here because some people may not want the alarm on their bike. But all in all, a lot of features in the display, and to get out of this, you just hit that underside button one more time, you go back to the initial menu, and then once more, and you're back at the home screen. So super clean display, nicely integrated into the frame, and lots of features to play with in there as well. All right, guys, we're out here again with Ben, our in-house mechanic who has a lot of experience turning wrenches on bikes, and he's gonna share his thoughts on the Stromer ST5. But before he does, I want to say thank you to Feedback Sports for providing us with their Pro HD rack. It's aluminum, it collapses small, but it's very durable, even with a 70-pound e-bike in it. And they have a whole lineup of tools. So if you like to tinker on your bike, or maybe you want to kit out your shop with some new gear, I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can check that out. Ben, I'm going to get out of the way, but I wanted to leave you with your thoughts on what you like about the Stromer.
All right, Mike, thanks. You know, the thing about this bike, there is a lot to like. I could get really deep and technical on every aspect of this bike and talk to you guys for an hour, but we'll just highlight 4 or 5 of my favorite things because we don't want to take too long. First things first, I'm always a fan of the belt drive. Belt drive to me means longevity. It's very, very quiet. It's clean. You never have chain oil or chain grease on your legs, pants, anything like that. It looks great. That's a big plus to me. I've never ridden a bike with anti-lock brakes before. These from Tektro are 4-piston calipers with an anti-lock brake mechanism. So when you're slowing down from 20 or 25 miles per hour, it's very, very easy to control. The tires don't skid. It just is a great way to slow down. It's something that, gosh, I really hope you'll find at lower price points in the future. With the Tektro brakes, I love the brake levers. They've got a big lever blade on them, so it's real easy to wrap your hands around them. Folks with bigger hands will like them. It has a reach adjustment, so you can make sure and dial in how close the lever is to the grip, which is a really key feature. I like the lines. I like the integrated stem and handlebar, nice, smooth, sleek frame. It's built tough. It rides very stiff. It feels awesome. Another thing I like about this is the power engagement. It's a hub drive. However, the way that the motor, the controller, and the hub motor or the battery work, it feels like a mid-drive bike. The power, when you get going on this, you can feel it. It's a great engagement. Those
nice. Now, what kind of things would you improve on it?
That's a real good question too. This one, there's not much to pick on with this bike, Mike. One thing I will highlight is the rack. Although it does say it's rated for 50 pounds, I feel like the footprint isn't very big. So if you're going to try to carry a larger box or something, you might run into a little bit of a problem there. Not a big deal, but just something to talk about. With the one-piece stem that looks amazing, I think that it would be nice, and this is a challenge to you, Stromer, is if you can make a stem and a bar that is this good looking, but also adjustable somehow, height-wise. That would really finish this thing off. One thing to make note of, and it's not necessarily a do better for Stromer, but just beware, if you buy one of these amazing bikes, you need to have a Stromer technician work on it. Otherwise, you might risk voiding your warranty. So make sure when you buy this bike, you buy it from a dealer you're close to, you like a lot, you get along with, and you always have, whether it's the pinion, whether it's the belt, whether it's the motor, whether it's the brake, take it to the Stromer dealer to get worked on.
Awesome, Ben. We'll let you get back to work. Those are some really solid points, and we will see you on the next review.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, out here on the Stromer, beautiful day out, and we're on these local trails. And I don't know if you can tell, but right off the bat, this bike makes no noise. There's no motor noise. Even when I really dig into the pedals, I'm on PA at mode 2. And if I really listen, I can kind of detect a hint of something, but it's not even loud enough, or there's not enough sound for you to even really determine if it's a motor. It's just really that quiet. It's the quietest motor I've ever felt, or ever heard, should I say. But let's kind of go through some of these speeds. So here in PAS1, I'm kind of in the middle of the range of gears. and I'm going about 15 miles an hour. But because of the torque sensor, that changes drastically depending on how hard I push. So even in PAS1, if I really dig into the pedals, I can still get up to 20. I mean, just very fast. But at a casual pace, not really pushing hard, I find here at PAS1, middle of the range of gears, I tend to stick around 15. If I bump up to PAS2 or mode 2, it's the same thing. It can hold here at 15, and if I dig into the pedals, it'll just get up to 20 miles an hour a little bit quicker with a little bit more authority. And then obviously the same thing here in mode 3. And then if I really want to go, you can go into sport mode, and this thing will hit over 30. There we are. And it'll hold over 30 for a while. Now, full disclosure, if it's a really hot day and you stay in sport mode, the motor will eventually get hot and it'll say, you know, it needs to cool down. It'll bump you down to a lower PAS, which is just to protect the motor itself. It's not meant to just stay in sport mode. But when you need it, it's there. And like I showed you in PAS 1, 2, and 3, I can still reach those same top speeds. The torque sensor on here feels very good. It's very similar to a mid-drive of a high-end bike, where you don't feel the power, you don't feel the punchiness. It just feels like your pedaling is so much more efficient and stronger. You know, it just feels like a magnified version of you, which is kind of the goal of every torque sensor, but not all execute it and get the same deliverable result. This one is by far the best that I've felt. So the gears on here, it's a 9-speed automatic Pinion C1.9 gearbox. So we have 9 speeds to work with, and you have a typical shifter here on the right, and you can hear me go up, you can hear me go down, and they're very crisp shifts. They're very nice. On your left. Thank you. And one really cool thing about it is when you hit the brakes and come to a stop, this gearbox will just downshift for you to a gear of your choice. So we have it set in 3rd gear, so if I come to a stop, you'll hear it click down. Hey there. That was that, if you heard it. I don't know if you heard it or not. But it shifts down to 3rd gear, so when I start again, I'm not fighting any, I'm not in the wrong gear, I'm not in a real heavy gear, not putting damage on my drivetrain. And it's just easier. It's easier to come to a stop, get going again without thinking about what gear you're in. Super nice feature. The shifters up here, you can pick between, you can pick the orientation, so you can pick, hey, you can pick when, if one button you want the gears to go up or down and vice versa. You can kind of pick invert or regular, which is nice. Kind of a preference thing, you just change it in the app. And the tires on here are Pirellis, and I've never had Pirelli tires on a personal bike. This is the first bike I've had them on, and sure, they're already a hybrid city design, so they're gonna roll really well, but they're also very quiet, very smooth, and on this flat surface, have good traction. I haven't rode it in any rain days, so I can't speak on rain, but I can tell you just around town, they're nice rolling, they're smooth, and they're quiet, which is all you can ask for in a tire. Now, no suspension. So that's going to be a point of personal preference. So the bike will come rigid with no suspension fork and a hardtail combination, or excuse me, no suspension fork and no rear suspension. But when you order it, you can opt for a front suspension fork, which would ultimately give you some travel up front and a little bit smoother ride. This bike we have here does have the suspension seat post, the kinetic seat post, and I actually really like it. It's been nice. This isn't a mountain bike where you're jumping, so you don't really need crazy travel and frame geometry to accommodate that. That suspension seat post just kind of eats up bumps for your back and your lower end where you don't kind of feel every bump there is. So that part's nice. Now the fork itself, I've read where people say they don't need a fork on here, and you certainly don't need a fork on here. But for me, this is a premium bike. I'm already paying over 10 grand for it. I would probably just add the suspension fork just for an even smoother ride and go from there. But that's really up to you. You could definitely get away with not putting a fork on this and it would be just fine. But if you're someone maybe like me who wants that extra comfort, they do have it available when you check out. Really, this bike is kind of the ultimate just get around commuter, everyday bike. It's super comfortable, very fast, very fluid, very quiet. It's just really nice. If you had a city commute, this kind of would be the ultimate commuter to have. Or you just live in a nice area with bike paths, this is still a great bike. It's kind of for those who want the best, and I feel like this kind of embodies that. Between all the tech we have, the anti-lock brakes, and speaking of, let's talk about those brakes. So we have 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes mated to 200 millimeter rotors, and then the front wheel has ABS. So it's got sensors where if I basically was to slam on the front brake, now most bikes, nearly all bikes, that's going to send you right over the handlebars, because when you stop your front tire, gravity and physics are going to send you over the front. But with this ABS system, what they did is they put a sensor in the bike that knows your bike's angle. And if it gets too front, if the nose stops and the back end goes up, that sensor will kick on this ABS, which is only on the front tire. And then that will ABS the front, where it'll do intermittent braking to where your front tire will still slow to a stop, but in a way that doesn't send you over the handlebars. And I've played with it and it feels good, but I'm going to be fully honest, I'm not slamming on the front brake and trusting it completely to see if I go over the handlebars. I'll let you guys do that at home. But let's do a quick brake test real quick. We're at about 20 miles an hour. 3, 2, 1, stop. Nice, that thing is so good. Those are good brakes. And I could feel that anti-lock brake in the front doing its job. Although I didn't do a full front only pull, I did about 50-50. But either way, I could hear it working. You might have heard it on camera. All in all, guys, it's a bike that's just fun to ride. It looks really nice. It's smooth, it's fast, it's low maintenance. You have this carbon gates belt drive. So aside from the software tech in it, the hardware itself, I worried about maintenance on this, but when you really think about it, with this sealed gearbox and the carbon gates belt drive, the hardware on it's pretty plug and play and low maintenance. If you did have a problem with software, a lot of that can be fixed with just, updates and firmware and things. So at the end of the day, super, super fun bike, very smooth and easy to ride. But let's head back in and wrap this up. So the Stromer ST5 Pinion, what's our overall thoughts? Well, I rode this bike a lot during my testing, preparing for this video. I took it everywhere from city commuting to long rides outside of town and everything in between. It's a very fun, premium feeling bike. It has no motor noise, it has no resistance on the tires, and it has all the tech you would expect and way more. It's just kind of an innovative, industry-leading bike when it comes to premium tech and features. And frankly, if you're the type of person who wants the best and wants the premium experience, this is where the Stromer ST5 Pinion really shines. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this review. If you haven't done so already, like and subscribe to this video and channel, and we'll see you guys out on the trail.